channel, or welcome if you're new. My name is Marielle. I'm a corporate working mom with a master's degree in psychology. Here I talk about all things motherhood, productivity, work-life balance, lifestyle, parenting, you name it, so stick around if you want to see more of that. On this video, I want to talk about everything newborn related. So I've just come out of the trenches from the newborn phase with my second child, and so I've learned so many things about newborns, both from my first and my second babies, and so I want to put them all in one video right here. So if you're expecting, and especially if you're a first-time mom, or even if you're a mom who already has had another child or a few children and it's been a while and you just need a refresher, this is the video for you. So let's first start with newborn sleep. This is a very controversial slash important slash interesting part of having a newborn, the sleep part, because newborns sleep for most of the time. They sleep more than they're actually awake at this point. So there's this thing called the wake windows, which is the period of time that the baby is awake for. So for instance, some babies are awake for an hour before they need to go back to sleep again, before they need to take their naps. Some babies are awake for just 30 minutes and they need to go back to sleep again. And some of them are awake for longer. Like the older that they get, the longer their wake windows are. So for instance, a wake window of a newborn is going to be different from a wake window of an 8-month-old. So for instance, a wake window of a very newborn might be just 30 minutes in length. They can only be awake for 30 minutes at a time. And then for an 8-month-old, let's say, they can already be awake for 2 hours or 3 hours at a time. So I learned about wake windows with my first, and I feel like this has been such a game changer in figuring out how they can sleep, how to make it work so that they can sleep longer stretches of time, which is all what parents want all the time when we have new babies. The thing is with newborns though is that they do sleep a lot, but you can't really control so much when or how they sleep, because they just basically follow their instincts and they just sleep whenever. So I found that it's such a good guide to follow the wake windows based on how old my baby is. And it's not like a hard and fast rule that each baby is going to follow. Definitely not, because every baby is different for sure. But it is a very nice guide to be able to keep in the back of your head so that you know, okay, why is my baby crying this time? Is it because especially when they're newborns, like babies in general, they don't know how to communicate just yet, so they communicate everything by crying. And sometimes, especially as a new parent, it can be a bit overwhelming when your baby's just crying and you don't know what the reason is. So I found it very helpful to log the times that they're sleeping, for instance, the times that they're eating, so that I know what could be the reason why they're crying at a certain moment of time. So for instance, I noticed that they're crying and I've tried everything else, and then I noticed that their wake window's actually already closing, so I know that it's probably because she's tired, and so I can take steps to be able to help her to fall asleep. The next thing that I found really helpful when it comes to newborn sleep is have a bedtime routine. So for both my babies, I started following bedtime routines, I think at around almost 3 months or around 3 months of age. So I didn't start immediately, because in the beginning they're just sleeping whenever, and then they don't really have any sort of pattern. Sometimes they still have a day and night confusion. Sometimes they sleep more during the day and then less during night, and you just kind of have to go with the flow in the beginning. But towards the end of the newborn phase, I found it very helpful to establish a bedtime routine. It doesn't have to be anything complex, but maybe you change their diaper, you feed them, you read them a bedtime story, and then you put them to bed. It can be that simple. Like, it doesn't have to be anything elaborate. Some people like giving baths to their babies. I heard that it's really good for helping babies fall asleep. But establishing a bedtime routine is very important for babies, because they create that sleep association, so that it's like a cue for them to know, okay, now it's time for bed and it's time to be able to sleep for a long period of time. Now I know that I need to sleep a little bit longer, and it's not a nap. And this will also hopefully help with the nighttime confusion. A little bit related to that is the sleep environment. So you need to make sure that the room is at a good temperature. It's not too warm, it's not too cold. Very important to make sure that they're dressed well. They're not dressed too little, they're not just dressed too much, because babies can overheat, and that can be a cause of problems later on. The ideal sleep environment is in a cool room, in their own bed, crib, or bassinet, that they're laying flat on their backs with nothing else in their bed aside from the mattress and a fitted sheet, and nothing else. No pillows, no nothing. We want to make sure that we're following safe sleep guidelines. And ideally, they're also going to be sleeping in the dark with white noise on. So as I mentioned, sleeping in their crib or in their bassinet is the most ideal kind of sleep for them. But obviously, that's for the night for the most part. But during the day, you're out and about. Sometimes there's things to do. How do you get your newborn to sleep? Sometimes you're on the go. They fall asleep in the car seat. They fall asleep in the stroller, and that's completely fine. That's normal. I do have to say it, like, if they're in a car seat, make sure that they're not sleeping in a car seat for more than 2 hours at a time. That's the guideline. That being said, it's good to be able to start having them sleep in their crib or their bassinet for at least one nap during the day. And I would just try to aim at least one of the naps during the day she would be in her crib. And for the rest, it doesn't really matter where she takes a nap, as long as it's safe, obviously. So I could baby wear her, she could be in the stroller when I'm having a walk, she could be in the car seat if I'm running errands or something like that. Now, I already touched upon this, but baby wearing is also really amazing for them for sleep, because a lot of newborns especially are very much craving our warmth and our scent. They can smell us, they love being close to mom, and baby wearing is such an amazing way to be able to have that, give that to them, give that contact to them, and for yourself as well, and also still be hands-free and be able to do other things if you need to. And I still do that until now. I'm almost 5 months postpartum, and so my baby's almost 5 months, and she still is in the carrier at least once a day because I love having her contact nap on me as well when I can. And yeah, it just helps me to be able to get things done but still keep her close to me. And bonus is that baby wearing also counts as tummy time apparently, which I just learned recently, and I love that. I touched upon baby's clothing earlier, and I wanted to dive in a little bit deeper on that because as newborns they have this moro reflex, so it's good to be able to swaddle them in the first few weeks of life, especially because they have that reflex and it's very, very strong, and it will definitely wake them up most of the time. Once they're a little bit older, then they grow out of the moro reflex and they don't have it so much anymore, you can transition into sleep sacks. And sleep sacks have TOG, so that's the value of how thick the sleep sack is. So if it's during the summer you want a thin sleep sack, and during the winter you need a thick sleep sack. The last thing that I want to address is the eat, play, sleep rhythm that I follow with both of my girls as much as I could. In the beginning, with my first, I didn't do that, and so I noticed that she had a sleep association with food, with feeding. And so after feeding, she would be sleeping right away. So we had play, eat, sleep with her for a long time. And I noticed that she wouldn't go down to sleep without a feed, even in the middle of the night. So even if she's not really hungry, she just wants to be fed, just because she associates that with falling asleep. Now let's talk about another pretty important / big part of newborn life, which is feeding. This is another thing that's very much talked about. Feeding. What do you do? Do you breastfeed? Do you formula feed? Do you bottle feed? Do you nurse directly? Do you pump? And I'm here to tell you all of the tips that I learned regarding feeding. Babies, especially newborns, they eat very frequently. So they eat an average of between 2 to 3 hours, not including cluster feedings, because that can happen as well. For both of my girls, I have tried feeding them with bottles. I have tried breastfeeding. I've tried pumping, nursing directly, and also pumping and giving it in a bottle as well. So I've tried pretty much all the different combinations. Let's talk a little bit about breastfeeding. When you're breastfeeding baby, there's so many different things that you need to think about because, you know, the latch and the position and all of this. One of the biggest things is that you need to bring the baby to your breast, not your breast to the baby. It'll help so much for your posture and to not get any body pains if you do that. Make sure that when you're feeding baby that they're facing you as well. If you're breastfeeding them, they're facing you and they're not like having their body like this and then like feeding like this. Because when we eat something, we don't eat like this as well. we face the food that we eat. Also want to say that breast milk also changes colors a little bit. Sometimes breast milk is very like watery, kind of pale yellow cream color, and sometimes it's much darker. Sometimes it's a little bit blue tinted, sometimes it's a little bit green tinted, sometimes it's a little bit pinkish. So it really depends on what mom eats, or if you're sick, it can also change, or if there's some blood that went into the breast milk, it can also make it a little bit more pink. It's normal, it's common, but just be aware that if it's like pink or red, then you need to maybe be aware that some of your blood is probably going into the breast milk. If you're nursing baby directly, also another good thing to know is that you can put a milk collector on the other boob that's not being nursed on. So for instance, you're nursing on this side, you can put a milk collector on the other side, just so you're not wasting the letdown that happens, because when you have a letdown, it goes on both sides, and it's not just on one side, it's both sides. So you don't want to waste the milk that's coming out of the other side, and you want to collect the milk as well, just so you're not wasting anything. I know that there are some nursing moms who just build up their freezer stash of milk just from the letdown, and that's what I was doing in the very beginning as well, because I was just nursing and I wasn't pumping anything at all. I was just nursing directly when baby needed it, and so I just built up the beginnings of my stash through just the letdown, which is really good. I also found it very useful to have a kind of app that tracks everything. So I have a baby tracker on my phone that I've been using since my baby was a newborn. I'm still using it until now. It's very helpful. I'm still using it until now just for me to remember when I actually last fed baby, so I don't need to constantly have it at my head. I'll probably know when it was, but it's just easier to have it on my phone, just so I don't need to like add that yet another thing in my head, you know. So I can just like put it, I just press start when I start feeding, and then I know when that was, I know which side that was. So it's just making things a little bit easier for me. The baby tracker that I'm using, it's an app. I can track her feedings, I can track her poop diapers, which is also very helpful when you have a newborn, because you want to make sure that they're having enough poop diapers and pee diapers during the day. You can also track their sleep if you want, just to see how they're sleeping during the day, and if there's any patterns. That can also be really, really helpful too. I also like having this tracker when you go on doctor's appointments, because sometimes the doctor asks you all these questions about how they're feeding, how they're nursing, how they're pooping, how much diapers are they having, and stuff like that. And sometimes it can be really muddled in your head, and it's so much easier when you have it on hand, like on a tracker. And I think there are even trackers that you can just share it with your husband, so too, if you can like be collaborating on the same thing. If you also want more tips and tricks and all of the things that I have been doing to increase my breast milk supply, feel free to check out the video that I made recently. I'm going to link it up here somewhere as well. Then you can look at it. It's really specifically for breastfeeding/pumping. It contains like everything I know about that topic basically. Another thing that I found very helpful when you have milk that you pumped for your baby and you're on the go is that to have like a milk warmer. Usually when you pump milk, and you put it in the fridge, or you even freeze it as well. And when you go outside, then you need to bring the milk that you've pumped, and you want to give it to baby then. So it's basically just this little gadget that you can use on the go. You charge it when you're at home, and then when you're outside, you don't even need to charge it. It's a really cool little gadget that you can put in your diaper bag. One of the most annoying things that I experience with newborns is having gas and reflux. So trying to make sure that you've burped them properly after every feed is going to be really, really essential. Not just useful, just essential to do during the newborn times especially. So it's important that you're creating movement with the babies, that there's so many different kinds of positions that you can put baby in. For the reflux, you just need to make sure that your baby is sitting upright, that you're keeping them upright for like 20 minutes after you've burped them. And I know it's a lot, but that's what we did with our second, because she had some reflux issues. There are also several over-the-counter medications that can help as well with this one. Probiotics are also very helpful with this one. We have probiotics that we use for our baby that also doubles up as a vitamin D supplement. So newborns, especially the ones who are breastfed, they need vitamin D. And this probiotic that we give already has vitamin D, so we don't need to give extra vitamin D. So I've gone to the doctor for my baby's reflux, and normally they say if baby seems happy, if they're not crying, they're not in pain, then it's normally fine and it's all good. It's just something that you'll kind of have to deal with for a few weeks, and it's really annoying, but it's going to pass and it's normal. Obviously, if you're still worried or if you still want to visit the doctor, feel free to do so. But yeah, it's just kind of a part of having a newborn. The last thing that I wanted to mention on the feeding part is to start giving baby bottles, if that's the route that you're planning to go to later on, a little bit earlier on rather than later. Once nursing has been established for baby, you can already start introducing a bottle here and there, and just to make sure that baby takes the bottle and that you know which bottles that and teats baby likes. For the last part of this video, I wanted to talk about the caring part of caring for a newborn in general. So you're going to be changing a lot of diapers. Having a newborn, you're just constantly changing diapers, constantly feeding, constantly sleeping, and changing diapers. And so what I found very useful is having a station, a changing station, diaper changing station in the areas of your home. If you have like a big home, if you have several floors, it's good to have a diaper changing station in each floor, for instance. So we had a diaper changing station upstairs, and we also had another one downstairs, especially when you're recovering postpartum, especially if you've had a C-section. You don't want to be going up and down the stairs all the time. In the very beginning, when they clip the umbilical cord, it has like that little clip and it's just kind of hanging there. They're already going to tell you in the hospital that you just need to leave it alone. Don't do anything. You don't need to do anything for it. Make sure that you're not folding the diaper on the belly button, because that's not going to be good for it. You need to try to make it free as much as possible. So fold over the diaper, like the front part of the diaper, fold it over so that it's like just underneath their belly buttons, so that it's not going to cover it. It's also normal for it to bleed a little bit. That happened with my second child, and at first I was like wondering if that was okay or if I should be worried, but apparently it's normal that it bleeds a little bit. As long as it's not a lot of bleeding, then you're fine. Everyone's been hearing about tummy time and how important tummy time is, and I've noticed that it's so difficult for me sometimes to think about it, to actively think about it, especially when you're in the newborn trenches. And so one of the helpful things that I learned is to also do tummy time right after changing your baby. So after you change their diaper, then you can quickly put them on tummy time for a few minutes. So that'll make it more frequent and more, it'll just be like a trigger for you to help you to remember that, okay, now they have tummy time for a few minutes. You don't need to do a lot of tummy time, especially in the newborn phase. When they're lying down on you, when you're like when you're reclined and their chest is on you and they're lifting up their heads, that's also already considered as tummy time. So that's another way that you can give them tummy time without really having them like flat on the floor or anything like that. And putting something interesting in front of them will also help them to be more distracted during tummy time, so that they have a little bit more motivation to look up and to interact with that object. And lastly, for the baths, is a little bit of a hit and miss, because there's some babies who really love bath time, but there are some babies who really scream and hate bath times. So make sure that when you're bathing your baby, that you're bathing them in a warm room, that they're not cold. You want to make sure that they're warm enough, that the room that you're bathing them in is warm enough, that the water is warm enough as well. You need to make sure that it's around 37 degrees Celsius. So putting a warm washcloth over their chest, their belly area, will help them to feel a little bit warmer and not be so cold. So those are all of the tips that I have on newborns. I hope that it was helpful for you. And if you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up so that I know that you liked it. And I'm going to be posting more baby content as well for the next few months. And if there's any other baby videos that you would like to see, motherhood videos that you would like to see, working mom content that you would like to see, please leave them down below and let me know. And I will see you in the next one. Bye!